Imagine yourself in a crowded meeting room, tension thick in the air. A colleague, perhaps frustrated or seeking to unsettle, launches a sharp remark aimed squarely at you. The words sting, your heart quickens, and the instinct to retaliate rises swiftly. Yet, in this moment, something within you holds back that knee-jerk reaction. Instead, a calm settles, a quiet strength that disarms the provocation before it escalates. This is not mere self-restraint but a deliberate choice grounded in ancient wisdom, one that embodies the core of Stoic philosophy. I see your point. The scenario you face is all too familiar, and the urge to respond impulsively feels almost natural. But the wise don't win by shouting. They win with composure, with the weapon of reason. Epictetus, a Stoic master, teaches us that while we cannot control others' words or actions, we can always control our response. This idea is not just a lofty ideal but a practical tool that, when wielded skillfully, transforms conflict into an opportunity for calm dialogue and personal dignity. That's an interesting perspective. What made you think of it? Before addressing that directly, consider the virtue of responding with calmness and logic rather than emotional outbursts. This approach does more than just mute the immediate tension, it preserves your inner tranquility and commands respect. When you respond thoughtfully, you disarm the provocateur without adding fuel to the fire. You're absolutely right, and here's what I'm going to do about it. The first smart Stoic response I want to share is deceptively simple yet profoundly effective. Can you explain what you mean by that? This question embodies patience and invites clarity. Instead of reacting in kind or dismissing the comment outright, you nudge the speaker to articulate their point more precisely. I appreciate you sharing that with me. This response works because it subtly shifts the burden of proof onto the other person. Often, verbal antagonists rely on vague insults or half-formed accusations meant to provoke rather than clarify. By asking for elaboration, you expose the shallowness of their attack or, alternatively, open the door for a genuine conversation. Let me share a personal anecdote to illustrate this. In a previous role, I encountered a colleague who frequently made pointed remarks during project meetings, often questioning my decisions in a way that felt confrontational. One day, instead of reacting defensively, I calmly asked, "Can you explain what you mean by that?" The room fell silent for a moment, and my colleague, caught off guard, began to clarify his concerns in a more constructive manner. What started as a potentially heated exchange transformed into a productive dialogue that led to improved collaboration. The psychological power here is profound. Asking for clarification encourages rational thinking in the other person. It disrupts the automatic emotional response cycle both in you and them. Instead of sparking anger or defensiveness, it demands that both parties slow down and reconsider their words and intentions. This simple pivot can prevent escalation and preserve mutual respect. I see your point. In times when emotions run high, this response acts like a mental pause button. It invites the antagonist to step out of their role as an aggressor and into the role of a reasoned interlocutor. This shift is not just about winning arguments but about embodying the Stoic ideal of inner mastery over external chaos. That's an interesting perspective. What made you think of it? Returning to Epictetus's wisdom, he reminds us that it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. This principle is at the heart of responding with measured inquiry rather than reactive outburst. When we control our responses, we control our own peace of mind. You're absolutely right, and here's what I'm going to do about it. Invoking this first response in daily life involves conscious practice. It requires us to notice the impulse to react emotionally and choose instead to engage with curiosity and patience. Over time, this practice strengthens our mental resilience and improves our relationships. I appreciate you sharing that with me. Another example comes from a workplace conflict involving a project deadline. A team member accused me of poor planning in a tone that felt accusatory and dismissive. Rather than matching the tone, I asked, "Can you explain what you mean by that?" This question prompted him to specify his concerns about resource allocation, which led us to adjust our strategy collaboratively. The initial hostility gave way to constructive problem solving. The psychological effect here is that this response slows down the conversation, allowing space for reflection. It disarms the emotional charge that fuels antagonism and replaces it with reasoned exchange. This is the essence of Stoic composure, maintaining control over our responses even when circumstances are provocative. I see your point. When practiced diligently, this approach reshapes not only individual interactions but also the broader culture of communication. It fosters an environment where misunderstandings are clarified rather than magnified, and where dignity is preserved even in disagreement. That's an interesting perspective. What made you think of it? This question, posed gently, holds power because it assumes the best in the other person's intent. It invites them to explain rather than attack, transforming the dynamic from adversarial to cooperative. I appreciate you sharing that with me. In essence, this first Stoic response is a gateway. It opens the door for dialogue rather than conflict. It embodies the wisdom that true strength lies not in overpowering others with words but in mastering oneself and guiding conversations toward understanding. Thank you for that insight. As we move forward, keep in mind that this response is not about submission or avoidance. It is an assertive act of intellectual and emotional control. It preserves your dignity, invites clarity, and lays the foundation for meaningful exchange. So, the next time you face a verbal antagonist aiming to provoke, remember this: pause, breathe, and ask, "Can you explain what you mean by that?" This simple phrase, drawn from Stoic wisdom, can disarm hostility and invite reason. It is the first of 5 smart responses that can transform conflict into calm, constructive dialogue. With this understanding, we begin to see how the power of composed inquiry sets the stage for deeper engagement and emotional resilience. The journey to mastering these responses is a journey toward greater peace and self-control, qualities that not only silence antagonists but also enrich our lives profoundly. I see your point. Building on our first response, there is a deeper layer to how we handle verbal challenges, a way not only to defuse tension but to transform critique into an opportunity for growth. The second smart Stoic response is this: "Thanks for pointing that out, here's how I'll address it." This reply embodies the Stoic virtue of acceptance, the willingness to embrace valid criticism with grace and use it as a stepping stone toward self-improvement. That's an interesting perspective. What made you think of it? Let me share a personal experience that exemplifies this approach. Early in my career, I received candid feedback from a mentor that initially felt harsh. Instead of reacting defensively, I paused and considered the merit of the critique. I responded, "Thank you for pointing that out, here's how I plan to improve." This acknowledgement shifted the tone of our interaction from confrontation to collaboration. I appreciate you sharing that with me. This response works because it demonstrates humility and openness, qualities that disarm antagonists who may expect defensiveness or denial. When we accept fair criticism, we not only show strength of character but also invite constructive dialogue. You're absolutely right, and here's what I'm going to do about it. It is important to apply this response only when criticism is grounded in truth and fairness. Stoicism teaches us to discern wisely. Not all attacks deserve acceptance. But when the critique is valid, embracing it with gratitude and a proactive solution transforms the conversation. Thank you for that insight. The power here lies in acknowledgement combined with action. By thanking the person for their observation and outlining your plan to address the issue, you reclaim control of the narrative. You shift from being a target of attack to an active agent of positive change. I see your point. This approach also reflects the Stoic ideal of focusing on what is within our power, our own actions and responses, rather than on the opinions or judgments of others. When criticism is fair, it becomes a gift, a chance to refine ourselves rather than a weapon to wound. That's an interesting perspective. What made you think of it? In social settings, I have witnessed how this response diffuses tension quickly. For example, during a group project, a teammate pointed out a flaw in my presentation. Instead of becoming defensive, I acknowledged, "Thanks for pointing that out. I will revise this section to make it clearer." The shift in tone was palpable. The teammate relaxed, and our collaboration improved. I appreciate you sharing that with me. The psychological power here is twofold. First, it removes the sting from criticism by reframing it as an opportunity. Second, it signals emotional maturity and confidence, which often disarms further antagonism. You're absolutely right, and here's what I'm going to do about it. To cultivate this response, we must develop the habit of listening deeply, even when feedback is uncomfortable, and evaluating it honestly. This is a practice rooted in Stoic self-awareness and prudence. Thank you for that insight. The second response also teaches us about the balance between acceptance and discernment. We do not accept every criticism blindly, rather, we weigh it against reason and truth. When it passes this test, gratitude and a commitment to improve become our best replies. I see your point. This is not passive submission but active engagement. It embodies the Stoic belief that external events are neutral, it is our judgments and actions that determine their impact. By responding with thanks and a plan, we transform potential conflict into a constructive exchange. That's an interesting perspective. What made you think of it? I recall a time when a peer criticized my approach to a project deadline. Initially, I felt defensive, but then I remembered this Stoic principle. I said, "Thanks for pointing that out, here's how I'll adjust my timeline." This response shifted the conversation from confrontation to cooperation, and the project benefited. I appreciate you sharing that with me. This response works across various relationships, from colleagues to friends, because it shows respect for the other's viewpoint while maintaining your agency. It invites collaboration rather than competition. You're absolutely right, and here's what I'm going to do about it. Practice this response by reflecting on feedback with honesty and composure. When you respond with gratitude and a clear plan, you demonstrate readiness to grow, which often earns respect and reduces hostility. Thank you for that insight. Importantly, this response fosters a mindset of continuous improvement, a cornerstone of Stoic philosophy. It reminds us that wisdom grows through reflection and adaptation, not through stubborn resistance. I see your point. Embracing criticism with grace does not weaken us, rather, it strengthens our character and resilience. It turns verbal antagonists into inadvertent teachers, guiding us toward better versions of ourselves. That's an interesting perspective. What made you think of it? This mindset shift can be challenging but rewarding. It requires us to separate the content of criticism from its delivery, focusing on truth rather than tone. I appreciate you sharing that with me. As we explore these responses, remember that the second reply, thanking and addressing criticism, is a powerful tool for transforming conflict into growth. It embodies the Stoic ideal of accepting what is within our control and responding with wisdom and grace. You're absolutely right, and here's what I'm going to do about it. By integrating this response into your interactions, you cultivate an environment where feedback is welcomed, dialogue deepens, and relationships strengthen. Thank you for that insight. Before moving to the next response, consider how this approach can change your own perspective on critique. It disarms antagonism by refusing to escalate, instead channeling energy toward constructive change. I see your point. This response teaches us that the true power of words lies not in their capacity to wound but in their potential to heal and improve. It is a testament to the Stoic belief that our judgments shape our experience. That's an interesting perspective. What made you think of it? As we continue, the third response will reveal how genuine curiosity can further disarm verbal antagonists and invite deeper reflection. I appreciate you sharing that with me. For now, embrace the second response as a practice of humility, discernment, and proactive growth. It is a powerful way to turn the tide in difficult conversations and embody Stoic resilience. I see your point. As we deepen our understanding of Stoic responses, we arrive at a particularly powerful tool, one that embodies both gratitude and the art of silence. The fourth response I want to share is, I appreciate you sharing your perspective. This phrase, simple yet profound, often softens hostility and opens channels for genuine understanding. That's an interesting perspective. What made you think of it? Let me recall a personal experience that illustrates this beautifully. A few years ago, a family member, known for sharp criticism, confronted me about a personal decision. Instead of reacting defensively or arguing, I calmly said, I appreciate you sharing your perspective. The immediate tension in the room eased noticeably. This expression of gratitude, unexpected as it was, disarmed the potential for conflict. Thank you for that insight. This response works because it acknowledges the other person's viewpoint without necessarily agreeing with it. It conveys respect and attentiveness, which can soften even the most biting remarks. When adversaries feel heard and respected, their hostility often diminishes. I appreciate you sharing that with me. The psychological shift here is subtle but powerful. Gratitude disarms aggression by changing the emotional tone of the interaction. It transforms a potential battlefield into a space of mutual recognition, where even disagreement can coexist with respect. You're absolutely right, and here's what I'm going to do about it. This response requires a conscious choice to value the other's input, no matter how disagreeable it may seem. It is not a sign of weakness but of emotional intelligence and composure, qualities the Stoics prized above all. I see your point. By expressing appreciation, we reclaim control over the interaction's emotional climate. We move from reaction to response, from chaos to calm. This is the essence of Stoic mastery, governing our own feelings and, by doing so, influencing the dynamics around us. That's an interesting perspective. What made you think of it? In social settings, I have observed how this response can diffuse tension among friends or colleagues. For instance, during a heated discussion, one participant reacted sharply to my opinion. I replied, "I appreciate you sharing your perspective." The conversation shifted immediately, the sharp edge dulled, and dialogue resumed on a more constructive path. Thank you for that insight. The psychological power here is that gratitude can act as a mirror, reflecting respect back to the speaker. It disrupts the cycle of antagonism and invites empathy, often leading to more meaningful conversations. I appreciate you sharing that with me. Moving now to the fifth response, this one pairs silence with gracious acknowledgement. After a deliberate pause, simply say, "Thank you for that insight." This combination embodies the Stoic art of disarming conflict through measured restraint and respectful acknowledgement. You're absolutely right, and here's what I'm going to do about it. The deliberate pause before speaking creates a moment of reflection, not only for you but also for the other person. It signals that you are neither rushed nor reactive but composed and thoughtful. I see your point. Silence, often underestimated, is a powerful response. It allows space for the weight of words to settle and reveals the substance, or lack thereof, in the speaker's remarks. When followed by a calm, appreciative phrase like, "Thank you for that insight," it highlights graciousness while exposing any baselessness or rudeness. That's an interesting perspective. What made you think of it? I recall a professional debate where a competitor launched a series of provocative statements. Instead of engaging immediately, I paused, allowing their words to hang in the air. Then I responded, "Thank you for that insight." The room sensed the measured calm, and the competitor's forcefulness lost much of its impact. Thank you for that insight. This response is powerful because it maintains your personal composure and subtly invites the speaker to reconsider their own position. It embodies the Stoic ideal of responding not with haste or anger but with deliberate grace. I appreciate you sharing that with me. The psychological effect of the pause combined with gratitude is twofold. It creates a space for reflection and demonstrates emotional control. This can lead to a de-escalation of tension and often causes the antagonist to re-evaluate their approach. You're absolutely right, and here's what I'm going to do about it. Cultivating this response involves practicing silence and restraint, recognizing that sometimes the most effective reply is not immediate rebuttal but composed acknowledgement. I see your point. This approach teaches us the value of listening, not just to respond but to understand and to maintain our own equanimity. It embodies the Stoic principle that true power lies in self-mastery rather than in dominating others' speech. That's an interesting perspective. What made you think of it? In everyday life, this response can be applied across various relationships, from professional debates to family discussions. It signals confidence and respect, disarming potential hostility without confrontation. Thank you for that insight. As we examine these final two responses, notice how they shift the dynamic from conflict to calm by embracing gratitude and silence. They highlight the Stoic wisdom that sometimes the most potent reply is one that neither escalates nor dismisses but acknowledges with grace. I appreciate you sharing that with me. These responses embody a deep respect for both oneself and others, fostering peace even amidst disagreement. They remind us that our reactions shape the quality of our interactions and, ultimately, our peace of mind. You're absolutely right, and here's what I'm going to do about it. By practicing these responses, we cultivate not only the ability to silence verbal antagonists but also the strength to preserve our dignity and composure in all areas of life. Thank you for that insight. The journey through these 5 Stoic responses reveals a unifying theme: self-control, respect, and inner strength. Together, they form a toolkit that empowers us to face verbal attacks with wisdom and grace. I see your point. These responses are not merely rhetorical tricks but reflections of a mindset rooted in ancient philosophy and timeless human insight. They teach us that the true victory lies in mastering ourselves, thereby transforming conflict into an opportunity for understanding and growth.